I was going to say, I think we perfectly agree certainly that, it's so odd that with this extraordinary example staring us in the face and being acknowledged now for 75 years, that no one just doesn't seem to be able to do it. I mean, there are perfectly there are practical on-the-ground reasons having to do with, let's say, building over the yard, so the threat center doesn't do that, the expense. I mean, I was a little involved in the yard project, and you saw this kind of terrible problem that was going on, which was that the cost of putting in the columns that you would need was so great that you couldn't support a low-rise building. It just wouldn't pay. So everything had to be smaller and taller. In other words, you were absolutely all the normal forces that would lead in New York to kind of making the buildings slimmer and taller were being sort of accelerated and propelled by this particular condition. So you're getting towers in the park, windy. Just in my mind, I would love the renderings with the thousands of people. It's very easy to put them in with digital technology nowadays. But where are those? Who are those people? Where are they going? Why are they going to be walking there? So I think that we're in complete agreement that, although there are particular reasons.
No, we're not in agreement because, in fact, there are tall buildings in Rockefeller Center, and lots of them. It isn't tall buildings that's at issue, it's the quality of the public realm and the absence of streets and sidewalks. And the reason they are absent is that the city planning department and the government of the city of New York set out a set of ground rules that precluded that. Their open spaces were determined by a master plan in advance, and they did not include streets, and they did not include sidewalks. And I am certain that architects who worked on it could very nicely have located the same high-rise buildings in a different configuration.
I totally agree, but I'm making the point that it's not just a question. Obviously, Rockefeller Center is a high-rise skyscraper complex. It is that, but it is so much more. There's some of the other elements, and in that I don't think we're just going to go.
Bill, you worked on Hudson Yards, didn't you? Maybe you have some comments.
I worked on the most objection for Hudson Yards estate, but I didn't work on anything else. I didn't. The thing that I found interesting is a comparison between Lincoln Center and Rockefeller Center is the issue of the collaborative process. Because you have, in the case of Lincoln Center, you have Phil Johnson, you have Max Abramovitz, you have Aaron Saarinen, you have Pietro Willis, all individuals of substantial abilities. But the buildings that they produced perhaps were, well, not worse than they've done, but close to it. And why was that the case? Because they had such a potential dynamic. Whereas in the case of Rockefeller Center, it was just the opposite. And so I think, for me, that aspect is the most important lesson. And I think right now journalism plays a huge role in the creation of the architect as a superstar. And it doesn't enable the architect to work in a collaborative fashion. It doesn't encourage the architect to work in a collaborative fashion. And so as a result, I think it has diminished our potential.
Well, I'll ask a question maybe of Dan and Hillary in terms of Rockefeller Center being, as you said, Bill, like sort of an architecture without authors, without specific authors. And we did argue for the genius of Raymond Hood as a sort of controlling mind and energy and dynamic but if you looked at Reinhardt and Hofmeister, they were belly of the building architects. They knew how to compact a core into a good office space layout. But yet, I mean, would it be possible to say that New York is the author of Rockefeller Center more than architects?
It's got a nice poetic ring to it. In fact, I think that the genius wasn't Raymond. I think it was John Arcott. That collaboration is a wonderful thing, but somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to say yes or no. and he had this extremely forceful personality. Now, he also had the judgment to believe that Hood was the talent he had with him. Corbett did nothing by all of the internal records. He was a wonderful theorist. He talked a lot, but he had no design for them. And Reinhardt and Hofmeister were, as you say, they laid out office spaces. Wallace Harrison did have an important role in the later phase of the center, but bringing it all together, I think it's that powerful, actually Moses-like figure, like Robert Moses, except with better taste.
And Hillary, with Penn Station, it really is the corporation that is setting the values of the program and ultimately deciding how the architects play in their game.
That's absolutely true. There was, in the case of Pennsylvania Station, though, a desire to make a significant rhetorical statement which transcended the function. And you've made the point in your work, Carol, over and over again about the rules of real estate and the role that they play in shaping buildings. And that certainly is a facet of Rockefeller Center, despite or notwithstanding the expansion of the public realm in Rockefeller Center. There's still the rules of real estate that shape that shape the towers. Lincoln Center did not participate in that, right? It wasn't just that it was a set of blocks that was wiped clean of buildings, but it was extricated from the rules of New York real estate. And I think that's, in the end, something that contributes to a certain sterility that one can feel, because it does feel like a place that's removed from the vernacular urbanism, the vernacular life of the city. But the architects were genuinely collaborative, and when you read the minutes of their own records, you see the individual architects were given responsibility for each theater, the shaping of the spaces that knit them together, the setting of the design guidelines that created unity. These were all team decisions.
And Alex, can you find one extraordinary thing about Rockefeller Center to summarize?
Well, I think the real estate basis of it is central. Hillary is absolutely right. The site was taken outside of normal real estate, but so was Battery Park City. And the rail yards that are underneath the Riverside South also allow the assemblage of a large site. So I don't think it's the size of the site or even its being outside of the normal rules of real estate in terms of what goes into it. I think what it is that Rockefeller Center was built within the framework of a public realm that was agreed upon. The streets and the sidewalks, and you made the point, Mr. Oakland, at the very beginning about that. It's ordinary. The same thing is true of Grand Central Terminal. And it, of course, spans 3 blocks, but it has a highway running through it. It has underground subways. It also follows the vernacular of the city. And what these other projects did not do, with the exception of the 2 residential ones that I showed, Battery Park City and Riverside South, they rejected New York. If you go back and you look at Alex Hooper's writings about Battery Park City, he's trying to get the best of New York. It's called South End Avenue after West End Avenue. The railing is inspired by railings elsewhere in New York. Now that may be a little hokey, but the results are fabulous if you look at it. So I think that the question of, is New York the author of Rockefeller Center is a very profound question. And in fact, the good things about these other projects and the bad things about some of the later ones have very much to do with whether they are part of the vernacular of the city